Voiceless. We back. This is Baraki X Kente. You know, you already know who it is. 1 foot off. Chewbacca. Nothing.
Sir Lord Keys the Thor.
I'm Trooper Joe, and I'm here to keep it real for you.
Alright.
And then we have a special guest.
We have Jana here.
Jana from the Civil Rights
Torch
Department.
That's right. Yeah.
Torch checks in the house.
Civil
Human
rights,
rights
human
service.
services.
So, Troop, you wanted to go into something.
Yeah, well, I want to go into a little bit of the educational system that happens here, and maybe Jenna can give her some insights from her opinion on the educational system, not just here in Worcester, but the educational system as a whole throughout the whole world. I see the educational system, I'll be pretty quick with this, I see the educational system as a system right now that's robbing kids of their creative, intellectual, emotional abilities and replacing it with a cognitive type of ability to where they come out of school, they come out with their little high school diploma and everything, but in the interim of learning all the facts and figures that 1 and 1 is 2, they learn that if you divide the 1 and 1, the 2 from the 1 and 1, you can have as many numbers as you want to. So they lose their creative thinking and they lose their emotional thinking, and because of this, they're not capable of going into higher educational levels at as quickly as they can, because they don't have that capacity to think outside of that cognitive box of 1 and 1 is 2, as to where 1 and 1 equals 2, and 2 and 2 divided could go as high as any number you want to. You can go 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. It can keep climbing as much as you want it. I don't know if you want to add a little bit of stuff like that. Do you think that maybe this is a planned thing, or is this something that just is to make the cities and the government, especially the federal government, look as though they're really putting a good effort forth to really educate kids? And this affects mostly kids of color and kids from different nationalities that come into this country.
That's a fair question. So I'm not an expert on education, but I can offer some analogy. I think when you look at what a lot of kids are coming to school with, right? A lot of them are coming from poverty. A lot of them experiencing violence in the home, right? Domestic violence, child abuse. A lot of them don't have the support of their parents or their families that they need, right? Because parents are working 2, 3 jobs, 4 jobs. Maybe one parent is in jail, etc. Right? There's a lot of gross inequality, and the resources are not there to support the children to be able to grow, because they're just really dealing and they're coping. And so when you're in the coping kind of space, you really don't have an opportunity to learn, and that's one of the big pieces that our educational system currently, I think, fails in that we provide certain programming, and some kids are offered an opportunity to really heal and to grow and to get the kind of support that they need, but a large masses are not. And then when you start out at the very basic pre-K level, and these kids don't get the help they need, they're already at a set, they're set back, right? And so if there's no intervention along the way, not a whole lot is going to be achieved in the course of their educational experience. So it's a huge problem, and I think we totally need more resources, and we need more community support.
Question. Since we're not even talking about Black History Month and civil rights, I'm just going to ask my own question.
Right.
So my thing is, again, I want to go back to technology. I feel that it ain't. It's all about credentials. So one, you've been allotted a position. I wanted to know what your credentials were.
Yeah.
She's a lawyer.
Of course, I'm saying we have lawyers in city, but my thing is, yes, I see a representation of the city council, and they all are lawyers and business owners. You know what I mean? So of course, I understand that pretty much studying law can get you into any type of setting, but I think people should actually be doing the stuff that they feel is their purpose, their calling to do. Not just to be sitting in a position to get it checked, or sitting in a position to be a figurehead. You know what I mean? So it's like you would put Martin Luther King as the president of the Civil Rights Department of America, because he best fits that position. You wouldn't put, Hillary Clinton as the civil rights. That's all I'm just trying to draw. Like, a type of common sense of the technology Worcester has is putting anybody anywhere, and they just say I'm a doctor or a lawyer in that position, all of a sudden that makes them suit to be able to be a responsible person in that position. So that's why I asked what your credentials were.
Yeah. So, sure, I'd be happy to share. I have a JD. Went
GED, that's what's up. I do too.
JD, Juris Doctorate from CUNY Law School, so the City University of New York. It's a great school.
Oh, that's Colin Powell's school.
Is it really?
That's Colin Powell.
That's a
keep it
surprise to me.
real.
So CUNY, actually, one of the great institutions, educational systems in the country for decades and decades in New York City. It was a free school to providing higher education college to New York City residents. So it's a great school, has a really deep social justice commitment, and so the mission of CUNY Law School is to serve those that are most in need, right? Services, law in the service of human need. So I graduated from there and have been working in the civil rights, human rights area since I graduated from law school. I did some time working at what was then Lutheran Social Services, which is now Century Care Alliance, as a humanitarian-based immigration attorney. So I would work with victims of crime. So mostly asylum seekers from other countries that had experienced severe torture and abuse, victims of human trafficking. And I did that work here in the city of Worcester. And before that, before I went to law school, actually, I was a social worker. I was a CASA supervisor, so if anyone knows what CASA is, so Court Appointed Special Advocates. So a lot of my experience is working with children and women specifically to address their victimization and looking to help them navigate very terrible life circumstances in the hopes that they could find some relief and some recovery after the fact. I've had some international experience. I speak Spanish. I've worked in Colombia and Guatemala, did a little bit of work in India. And a lot of the kind of experience that really exposed me to a lot of the social justice issues came from when I did my undergraduate in New Orleans. So, so as a sociology and women's studies double major, as an undergraduate, I really was immersed in the inequalities that existed. And if anyone knows anything about New Orleans, well,
New Orleans,
we can talk, right? It's really interesting to have a lot of awakenings as a young person in the city of New Orleans to really understand what injustice means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of history down there.
Yeah.
And I guess my last question would be to somehow, can I close my eyes and can you somehow give me a pitch on what made you want to go, unless somebody was like, Jenna, we have this civil rights position, well, you'll be great for, you know what I mean? You have the credentials, which I think a lot of the jobs around here of power are handed off. Then there's no application process for it. It's usually somebody vouching for you to get it, so someone else won't get it. But, you know what I mean? What made you, so that's what I want to say. What made you want to say, all right, Worcester has a civil rights problem, something happened in Worcester, I want to tackle it. What made you want to say, I need this position? I need to change. What did you do? What did you see? What was going on that said, you know what, I need this position. I need to change Worcester?
That's a good question. It seems like forever since I took this job. I took this job, actually, I called I'll share something with you. This position was initially advertised as a part-time position. So going back to your earlier comments, that, it was a time of trying to build back a city department that had been largely depleted based on resources, right? We had a huge layoff in 2009 citywide, and a lot of departments just got gutted. And so this part-time position, I was thinking, how are you going to do this job as a part-time position? And what does this job mean? And how can I do something good with this position? So it was a curious kind of out of curiosity that brought me to this position. And then also, looking back and being inspired by President Obama's run for presidency, that was really inspiring in terms of, I had not considered working for government before, but then I thought, you know what, maybe I could do something. And and thinking about that led me to, considering a position for the city of Worcester. And that's really, I think I mentioned this before, that point about you can do the work, the social justice work, from outside.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it from inside. I think that it's really effective when you do it from the inside out, but it's really hard, right? And you need to make sure that you're building relationships and you're building capacity. And so I'm not going to say that I'm doing everything right. I'm not going to say that I can do anything that you might be, wanting me to do. But I'm going to try, and we're going to work within the system to make the changes. And I think that that's a true, honest way to explain my position and what I'm trying to do. And I think that it's part of what I try to educate people too about. Hey, you should participate with local government. You are the most impacted by the decisions made at the local level. And if you just brush it off and say, no, I'm not, I don't want to be part of that process, well, it's going to continue without you. So,
yeah, it will.
right?
You know that's right.
So I think, if you're interested in making change, you can do it from the inside out, you can do it from the outside in. And right now I'm trying to do some good work from within.
It sounds as though you got a handle on trying to do this good work. But I got a question for you, because you got such a colorful, kind of broad, geographic-based exposure to many people who are in need. Because I just can't say people of color because you've been so far and everything.
Mm-hmm.
How do they compare to the people in need here in Worcester? And then, again, how does the different government type of ordeal, I don't want to go too much to the government, but just more so on the people, how do they compare to the people from New Orleans and the Deep South and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a hard one. Well, you know what? I went back after Katrina to try to help out a little bit, and I was working a little bit with the Innocence Project, which tries to help exonerate folks that are on death row.
Uh-huh.
And they do so by trying to look at DNA evidence and other evidence that can be brought in after the fact, right?
Yeah.
It's a great program. And what we know about death row is 1 in 10 people on death row can be exonerated and are exonerated just because based on kind of what was happening in the trial, what was happening based on the evidence that was there at the time. And when I was there in New Orleans trying to do this work after post-Katrina, it was so devastating because a lot of it was trying to look through records. And New Orleans was totally destroyed. Most of it was destroyed. These huge warehouses where they had housed all this evidence, like files and also actually samples of hair and different things, were just washed out, right? Flooded, right? So if you're on death row and you're like, my only chance was in that box in this warehouse, it's gone, right? And so that's a little piece of what the bigger picture is in New Orleans, is that that place was a mess. It was already very, very poorly run. There was a lot of corruption in terms of what was happening in the city before Katrina. But then afterwards, things just really, really got really bad. And so that piece of it, in terms of how do you restore justice, after the fact, when you have tons of people that are in jail just kind of sitting and waiting, or had been locked up during Katrina, and hey, I don't know, those people that were witnesses are gone now. That part of it was really devastating and really hard, and they're really still struggling, really in a big way.
Yeah, I was at Katrina myself. I was in Texas. I was in Houston, triaging people that came off of the bus and stuff like that, and sending them into different areas where they can receive some medical care, and doing a little bit of patch-up work on some of the people on the bus, mostly. But I found that the people from New Orleans and everything, they are mostly taking care of themselves on that ride over in a spiritual and a mental type of capacity. And then I found out later on, because that's where I lived, was in Houston, that the people were being displaced out of there to different places and stuff. So I could see the problem that arose for you, because they weren't coming back to New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
New Orleans had a flushing, and from their flushing, they were going to create a whole new toilet system. You know what I'm saying? That's exactly what they did. They got a whole new system down there. It's based upon the same jazz type, February type of thing, but the people are different now. They're all different. They're not the same people. So I can see that frustration. But how does that relate to some of the peoples that live up here in Worcester, where I see in Worcester, I'm doing kind of my own little takeoff research and everything. I go to this laundromat once a week, and in the laundromat I just take note the different type of people that come in there and go outside to use the laundromat and everything, and I'm finding that there's a big, huge influx of white junkies that come into the laundromat and use the laundromat as
Junkie's
a
not a
place.
good term.
Wait a minute, use the laundromat as a place to
Addicts.
get together and then from there they disperse from there. But the effects of that is making a stigma on the city of Worcester that this is a minority problem that's being generated in Worcester with the junkies and stuff. From my
Addicts.
research, it's not.
Addicts.
So how does that see the type of relationship between the people of New Orleans that you saw and the people of Worcester that you now deal with?
How do I make that leap? I'm trying.
It's only 4 minutes.
I tried to
We only
keep
got a
it
couple
You-
minutes.
You know,
We got a
what,
couple
what,
minutes left.
I don't know if I
You
might
can opt out.
I might just sidetrack a little because
Oh,
I'm not
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
know
yeah.
how to answer that question.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I try to do, so I was recently looking at some research online and trying to make some comparisons around what we have on our state laws in the state of Massachusetts versus other states, right? And so when you think about how bad things could be here, right? And then you look at places like Alabama. I worked in Alabama for a little while. You have no idea unless you've lived in other states in this nation to understand the kind of wild diversity that exists, right? Because we're in this like very liberal progressive haven in Massachusetts, and we've got and you know, say what you say what you might.
But yeah, it's
But
supposed
you
to
know,
be.
but you know, I lived in Texas,
Yeah.
right? I lived in New Orleans, and you know, for maybe half a year or a year, I was on hate crimes hotline, and I was, you know, a counselor that would take the calls. And unless you've been there and you've been like answering these calls and you hear what people are experiencing, unbelievable types of discrimination, like raw, very raw still. And I think that piece is that we can fool ourselves to thinking that we're all one nation and that we've all kind of progressed in our laws and our policies and our practices, but it's totally not the case. And I think that that's part of what we're seeing right now in the presidential election right now is you're seeing, you know, parts of this country think and view things totally different. And in terms of kind of where we're going, in terms of increasing equality, some people want to roll back the clock. And that's still a struggle that we need to really focus on in terms of
Yeah.
how we're going to make progress.
Oh, and I get it, definitely. I just don't believe in the ERs and the ESTs. So the bigger, the better, the smarter, the smartest. You
We
know.
have 3 minutes. So
Yes.
We can't really ask
Yeah,
any
I'm not
questions.
even
We
asking.
gotta wrap it
There's
up.
not really any questions. It's just that at the end of the day, the comparison, it's just different. You know, up north, I think we've been able to trick people's minds into thinking that they have control, but we control them the whole time. I think down south, they're just more blatant with it. You can't trick them. You know, and I'd rather see it coming than to not see it coming. And I think that's been like the American polar opposites. Is up north is tricknology. You know, they'll have you thinking that yes, you're working, you're a productive member of society. No, we're just using you and manipulating you in a way you can't even see. You understand? We're just having you represent us, and we're the KKK subliminally, but you know we're the city council right now, and you're representing us. So that's up north. Down south, they know it. They know that the city council is part of that system. They know that the courthouse and the justice is part of that system, and they call it. You know, the white people don't like the black people don't like the white, and it's just, you can see it. Up here, you just can't see it. It's smoke and mirrors. That's what I was just trying to tell you. The tricknology is they have you thinking that it's peace and peachy up here, but no, it's still the good old boy network of the small percentage controls the large percentage, and the small percentage don't even live in the areas that are dictating laws and rules for the smaller percentage. You know, that's the voice of the voiceless fact we have here.
All right, so 91.3 WCBW, Voice of Voices. They took all. I couldn't really ask a lot of questions, Jenna. Yeah, they know they just. I couldn't really ask what I wanted to ask. So, can you come back on the show in the future?
I'd be happy to. I don't know if you noticed, but I've got a really big belly right now.
Congratulations. Yes.
So I'll be going on. Thank you. I'm going on maternity leave shortly, but I'd be happy to come back and visit and
Yeah, shout out
Okay.
to women.
continue the conversation.
Women in action.
Yeah, definitely. Women in Action, shout out to Women in Action, Positive Impact, Real Truth News. Holla at that blog. And thanks for coming on the show, Jana. If you got any human rights concern, any disability concerns, you can contact you at where?
So I'm at City Hall, 508-799-1152.
All right. So go down there. Any human rights issues, any disability issues, make sure you just get your concerns out there and your words to be heard, and Jana can help you. All right. So 91.3 WCW Voice of Wisdom out of here. Peace to all my listeners, to people, the callers that called in, and we'll be back next week. Same bad time, same bad station Tuesday.
Shout outs to my wife, good show, great show, Jenna, civil rights, women, men of color think tank, all of y'all, GOD.
Shout out to my lovely bride Laura, and to my two scientists, Mason and Max, and all special arts. What?
All right, we out of here.
Want to shout out Jenna?
Shout out.
I'm just shouting right now. I'm shouting from the inside.
We out of here. Yeah.